Hey, welcome back to the Faculty Factory podcast. I'm Kim Skorupski here at Hopkins, looking at a new guest. I'm really excited to introduce you to him, Dr. Joshua Schwarzbaum, MD, MBA. So the Faculty Factory, those of you who don't know or you're new to the Faculty Factory, we are a community sharing tools to build leaders. So Casey Callanan is the producer. He helped me come up with this idea, I don't know, probably 6 or 7 years ago now. We've been doing the podcast for 5 years, but Casey was telling me about this really great doctor he met and was introduced me to a book he had written. And I looked it up and said, "Oh my gosh, well, why don't we have him on the podcast?" And Casey said, "I'm sure he would want to be on the podcast." So here we are. Dr. Schwarzbaum was so gracious and said, "Sure, I'm happy to." Again, MD, MBA. Let me tell you about this book he wrote, and it's on Amazon. It is entitled Listening for a Feeling Finds True Healing, a guide to healing from the inside out. It was just published in February 2024. It's an illustrated book for adults and children alike. It's an exploration into the art of genuine connection by a practicing emergency medicine and addiction physician working in the inner city. He lives in New Jersey, New York City. He'll tell you all the places he works. So this book champions the power of listening in stillness and reminds us that healing begins with the simplicity of truly hearing another person. So as soon as I saw the title and read the first couple of those descriptive sentences, I thought, oh my gosh, this has so much relevance, especially now in academic medicine, for those of us who are trying to hone our leadership skills, mentoring, coaching, communicating, building teams, all those competencies and principles we talk about in academic medicine. Dr. Schwarzbaum has kind of nailed it in this great book, Listening for a Feeling Finds True Healing. So I'm going to have him tell you who he is and where he works, and we're going to have a really cool conversation. Dr. Joshua Schwarzbaum, take it away. Tell us where you work and all the places you're busy.
Yeah, thanks again, Kim, for having me. So I'm Josh Schwarzbaum. I work in a bunch of different places. I work at St. Barnabas Hospital in the Bronx in the emergency room. I work in addiction centers in Harlem, in New York City. I work in a place called Chemed, which is a federal qualified health center in Lakewood, New Jersey. And then I do coaching and consulting with other physicians, organizations, hospitals on these sort of leadership topics. So I
That's
keep my
all?
hands full and busy, all over the place, but it's good. I enjoy it.
Oh my gosh, that talk about hustle. Well, Josh, tell us about the book. So why in the world, with someone who like you has 52 jobs, why do you think I need to write a book? Because I'm so bored.
So yeah, I didn't think about it exactly in that way. What happened was I was working at the place at Chemed, um, and there was a fair for the MAs, the medical assistants over there, to teach each other different things, how to do an EKG, how to do blood work, whatever. I didn't originally know it was mostly for the MAs, but they sent out an email to the whole organization saying, if you want to teach something, we're having this whole fair. So I thought, what could I possibly teach, to the organization in general? And because there's always various different levels of people. So I'm not going to go in there and start talking about like the management of CHF. It's not the most beneficial thing for everybody in the organization to learn. So I thought, let me see what I could teach. And then it came to me that I could teach something about listening, because I think listening is something that we do no matter what level we are in medicine, no matter where we are in life. It's something that we all do all the time and we can all do better at. So I wrote out this thing and then I decided I'm going to make it into a book afterwards. So that's kind of how it came about, basically. And I got it illustrated, and yeah, I did it illustrated because I felt like, words can only convey so much. I discuss this in the book a little bit, that pictures often can just put you in a certain setting or give you a certain feeling or give you an understanding of something deeper than what you can get just by speaking alone or just with the words. So that's why I made it illustrated. And yeah, it sort of came about from there. It took me a while to finally get the whole thing done, but thankfully it came through.
Well, kudos to you, Josh. This is a great example of course, I have to apply it to academic medicine. I'm thinking, what a great example of how we can take the work we do and get extra wins, have a value added component of it. As long as you're putting a talk together, as long as you're putting a presentation together, you're going to do a seminar or a workshop or have a conversation, and you put the effort into organizing it, and you think, wow, has some value. why not go to the next level? Why not try to publish it in some public forum, on a blog or in an article, in an editorial, and for you, in a book? I think it's a nice example of taking our work and maximizing the value and the impact of it. So again, kudos to you for, first of all, volunteering and having that heart to want to contribute to your community. And then secondly, being mindful of, all right, good presentation techniques, who is my audience and what is the purpose? And then coming up with a product and taking it over the finish line to something that have a broader reach. Now, you said something that everybody listens and we all do it. And can you tell us a little bit more about, because immediately when I heard you say that, I'm like, oh my gosh, I can be a terrible listener, because sometimes I'm not listening to understand. I'm listening to interject. I'm listening to correct. I'm listening to jump in with my zinger. So how did you get so good at the listening? Where did you come up with this communication tool?
Yeah, I mean, it's true. It's like you said, so much of how we listen and so much of what we're taught about listening is this like active listening process of where we're trying to pay attention to what the other person is saying, like get into this back and forth, repeat what they said, reflect on what they said, all this sort of stuff. But when we're doing that, we're actually not completely allowing them to just say what they want to say and let them be who they are, because we're figuring out where we can interject, like you just said, how we can get our say into it. And so many times when we're listening to anybody speaking, we're comparing, and we just do it. It just happens that we're comparing our experience to their experience, and we get excited about what they're saying, or we get upset about what they're saying. And before we know it, the whole conversation is getting into a much, much different place. What I realized through working in medicine, especially in the emergency room and addiction, is that when you let people speak for a while, a lot more information comes out, because we don't have the answers necessarily. To come up with diagnoses, the best way is to let the patient speak longer and longer and longer. We maybe can help guide them or something, but once we start to interject our own agenda in there, it just takes it to a different place. So what I found was, and this isn't only in terms of making diagnoses, but just in terms of relationships with patients, is that when we let them speak, they feel better automatically. I mean, think about a time that you really felt listened to, where somebody wasn't necessarily jumping in and interjecting every couple of seconds or every minute or whatever, where you could just unload and say whatever you wanted to say without any judgment, without having to worry about what the person who you were talking to was going to say. And it feels good. But most of the time, that just doesn't happen, because that's not how we're listening most of the time. So what I found was that, and I work with a tough population, both the addiction centers in Harlem, and the hospital I work at, St. Barnabas, is in the South Bronx. And I did my training at Jacobi and Montefiore Hospital, which is also in the Bronx. So I've been dealing with this tough population for a long time. And when I started working in medicine, it was like, I feel like I was like running around in circles. Like I'm trying to do my best. Nobody's listening to me. I'm telling them, this, that, the other thing. And one day it kind of hit me, and I was like, something's got to change. I got to change something within myself. So when I did that, it took, now looking back at it, that was many, many years ago. It's a lot easier to do than I originally thought. And that's what I've been helping other people with, other doctors, other professionals. And that's how I got into my consulting with thehealthyinside.net is my website. And through there, I actually wrote a couple of ebooks on there too, related to addiction. And I have one coming out about burnout in medicine very shortly. And through there, I've been able to help professionals and doctors and do seminars with hospitals and stuff and other larger corporations too, outside of medicine, because these sort of topics, they just permeate life everywhere. And the more we're able to just get out of our own way, the more people are able to just say what they say and then can heal. And they just heal better and they heal faster. And it just changes the whole dynamic of the relationship. So it's something that I think is just so important to do. And it doesn't take a lot. It takes a little bit of just restraint and just listening a little bit in a different way. And when we let this stuff come out, from somebody else without our judgment, without getting in our own way, we learn a lot. We learn so much from them. And then we can incorporate the things that we learn either into our lives, into our relationships, into our diagnoses, into our patient care, into whatever realm it is. And in a world that's moving so fast, we forget what it's like to just sit back for a couple of minutes. And often in medicine, it's not about, and I teach EMTs and paramedics too, as part of with the ambulance I work with. So much of what I try to teach them, especially because, when we're working with EMS, we're given tools and we rush into somebody's house and we want to do something. In the hospital, it's a little bit different. People are coming to us. I think it's a little bit of a different dynamic. But especially with EMTs and paramedics, I like to teach them, it's not about what we can do. It's about what not to do. Also, when to hold back, when to say, I'm going to wait a couple of minutes. And that's what listening really does. It's about holding back. It's about not interjecting ourselves. It's about letting somebody be who they are. And then this is essential for not only patient care, but if you're teaching students, if you're doing faculty development, if you're in leadership positions, look at the leaders around you. Who are the people that are most successful? Who are the people who you want to emulate? Who are the people you want to be? Not the people that come and are yelling at you and screaming down. Like the people that listen to you, that want to know who you are, that help bring everybody up. And that's what this does.
Wow. So yelling and screaming, not a good thing, huh? No yelling.
Most of the time, probably not. Every once in a while. Sometimes you need to do it,
Okay, wait, I'm going to write that down. No yelling, no screaming. Okay, check. Okay. Josh, fantastic. I'm curious if you could take us back to when you realized you said something had to change, that this isn't working for me. Why am I running around telling people what to do and nobody's listening to me? And then you said something had to change, and that was the epiphany. Can you take us back to that moment? What did you observe? What did you feel? What were you thinking? And only because I'm wondering if there are other listeners out there now who might find some parallels in, like, what's the canary in the coal mine, if you will. Like, when do I know that something's got to change? Because I feel like some neighbors are like, this is unsustainable. Everything is always unsustainable. But what was the moment for you, or series of moments, when you realized, okay, I got to change?
Yeah, I think it was probably towards my second or third year of residency. I don't remember exactly when, but I was, it was tough. I was working, 6 days a week, 12-hour shifts type of thing. And overnights, days, switching back and forth, all this sort of stuff. And I was just feeling like I'm not having the impact I wanted to have. I was coming into work. I was leaving like feeling down, like I don't even want to come back. It's not worth it. I'm trying to put my heart into this, but the patients aren't responding in kind. Like, this wasn't what I originally wanted to go into in medicine. That wasn't my idea of medicine. And it was just like, what am I doing here? So I thought a lot about this. And then one day I was just walking into a patient room and I said to myself, or somewhere to myself, it came to me, I don't even know if I said it or whatever, but basically I realized that if I can't change the people that I'm dealing with. If something's got to change, I got to change myself. And it was from there that I started looking into physician wellness, going to different seminars, all this sort of stuff. Eventually, I came to this understanding, which I found to be the basis, basically, of all this sort of stuff, all of our well-being, all of our understanding, all of our thinking. When I came to that, it kind of solidified everything. It took me a while to end up finding it, but finally I found it. And once I found it, all this other stuff that we're taught to do, I found it may be useful and it's fine if it works, but it's not about taking on more. It's about doing less. The more we take on, and so much of physician wellness was about like journaling, going for walks, writing down 3 good things, doing more and more, reading, going to seminars. But I realized, how much work can I take on? I'm already working so much. Like, I don't want to start doing more stuff at night when I get home. I'm I'm already tired. So then I found this understanding, and it's about doing less. And it's about understanding how we are at the center of our own reality, each one of us. When I started to see this more and more, that I'm at the center of my own reality, then what people say to me, how they say it to me, it may have an effect on me or it may not. But the question is, how does it have an effect on me? It has an effect on me through the way in which I think about anything, through the way I think about it. And I could see that this happens in my life, and I see this happening in other people's lives, Because let's say two people come into the emergency room with the same disease or the same accident. One person is hysterical and one person is calm. They have the same disease, or the same accident, same injuries. What's the difference? If the external circumstances are creating the way that we feel, then everybody should respond to the same external circumstances in the same way. But that's not the case. I'm feeling burned out at work, but the person who's sitting right next to me, who's working the same place, working the same shift, feels totally fine and is smiling and having a good time. So now I have to start asking myself, is this the emergency room that's causing me to be this way? Is this my patients that's causing me to be this way? And then we're told in medicine, unfortunately, and I think it's good-hearted, but it's not actually the case. Everybody's going to be burned out. You have so many things you have to worry about. You have the administration, you have the EMR, you have the patients, you have this, you have that. Okay. Are these truly, truly the causes of burnout? Are these truly the cause of the way I feel? Well, if they are, then everybody should feel the exact same way. And that's just not what we find. So now all of a sudden we see that there's individual differences. So how is that happening? We all have the ability to think. How we think about anything is going to be what creates our individual differences. And that comes based on our backgrounds, based on our upbringing, based on our other thinking patterns, all sorts of stuff, which we can get into more. But it's a very simple process, basically, that happens. Something happens to us on the outside. We think about what happens in whatever way we think about it, to no fault of our own. And then our thoughts essentially determine how we feel. So now I started to realize that if I'm able to, I don't even have to change my thinking. The more I'm able to understand that it is my thinking, and it solely is my thinking, now I've let myself off the hook, because I can't change what's going on outside of me. So this brings it back to the full circle. I can't change the patients. I don't know what they've been through. I can't change their upbringing. I can't change anything about them, but I can change myself. I can change the way in which I look at the patients. I can change the way in which I think about the patients. And if I do that, now all of a sudden, I'm not dealing with the same thing that I'm dealing with anymore. Because here we go. I've taken the same, I can walk into the same room, and if I look at the person as someone who's mean or irritated or whatever, I'm going to walk out feeling like upset about it or angry. If I look at them as somebody who has nowhere to go, who needs help, who's been trying, they may still be mean and angry and irritated, but now I look at them and I have more compassion, and it's the exact same situation, the exact same external situation. But now I leave the room and I feel a lot better. I feel like I'm having more of an impact. So that was a change that essentially took place, and it's made a profound impact. And that's what I am trying to do by teaching it to other people. And I really would love to see this more in medicine, especially because we're dealing with such important things. We're dealing with people's lives. And the more that I've been able to do this, the more I've been able to understand this and these principles, the more effective I've been able to be as a doctor, as a healer, and then in other realms in life too.
As a human. So doing less, profound. It is profound. Doing less. I really resonate with that idea that you said of all the interventions, the things we're supposed to do, the gratitude journal. And yes, all those things have value and meaning. But I can totally relate to the fact that, wait a minute. So now after work, I have to breathe and journal and exercise and cook myself a healthy meal and meal prep the rest of the week and do all these stretching and exercise, toning exercises, and reach out to a friend, and all the things that one should do to have this great life. It does get stressful. So, and the irony is, wait a minute, I'm trying to do all these things to be more healthy, happier, in a better place, and it's stressing me out because that's the paradox of that. And I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about. You said, of course, something very important that I talk a lot about, this serenity prayer. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So I love that serenity prayer. If things are out of your control, you can only control one thing, yourself. And then you said something really interesting. You said, and then being aware of, what am I thinking? Why am I thinking that? And then I thought you were going to go with what a friend of mine has always said: don't believe everything you think, because sometimes we think things that are wrong. So like, and she doesn't like when I say don't believe everything you feel either. She's like, no, trust your feelings. I'm like, I don't know if I should even trust my feelings sometimes, but don't believe everything you think, but don't believe everything you feel sometimes, because we can mess ourselves up. But then you didn't go that way. You said, then I realized I don't even change the way I think, because the way I think is the way I think. It is what it is. So could you tell us more about that pathway and thinking of other people who are listening to this going, wait a minute. So I can't control the external world. I can't control my patients, my colleagues, my boss, my partner, my kids. And now I can't even control myself. Is that what you're saying?
Sort of.
Sort of, yeah, sort of.
Yeah.
I love this. Tell us more.
Yeah. I mean, so thinking is interesting because a lot of therapies work on actively changing our thinking, but very few, if any, really get to the understanding that well, they get to the superficial understanding, but I don't think it gets to the deep understanding that it actually is our thinking that creates whatever it is that we're feeling. So we can work on changing our thinking, but then we're taking an active part in that and then thinking about our thinking. And then the more we're thinking about our thinking, we're just going down a rabbit hole that it's harder and harder to get out. So
Yeah.
what I found is that when we understand that we're the thinker, I am the thinker, my thoughts automatically change. God gives us all the ability to think. Now, there may be a thought that comes into my head from I don't know where. I can't control that, right? All of a sudden, I'm walking down the street, boom, a thought comes in my head. Could be a good thought. It could be a bad thought. It could be a neutral thought. It could be whatever. We all have 10, I don't know, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50,000 thoughts that come through our head a day, most of which we don't even pay attention to. They come in and they go out and they don't have any effect on us. So, okay, fine. So now we have all these thoughts that come. I don't necessarily know where they come from. But it's the thoughts that we pay attention to. It's the thoughts that we continue to think about. Those are the ones that tend to stick with us and now create how we feel. Sometimes we can't get ourselves out of it. And all of a sudden, we're thinking and thinking and thinking, and now we start feeling. And there's a direct connection between the thought and the feeling. There is no feeling without a thought. It may not seem, the thought may be buried in there somewhere. We may not know where it is. But if we never had a thought about something, we can't have a feeling about it. It won't happen. It could be somewhere in our subconscious. We may not be able to find it, but there has to be a thought related to the feeling. So when I found that the fact that I'm the thinker, that I have the ability to think, now there's thought, the principle of thought, which is the fact that we all think, the fact that thoughts create how we feel. Then we have our own personal thinking. Our own personal thinking is then what takes us for a ride. So if I can get myself out of my own personal thinking, or if, like you said before, I don't necessarily have to believe my personal thinking, which also means I don't have to believe the feeling, or I don't have to stick with that feeling because I know it's just coming from my own personal thinking. And this goes also to the serenity principle a little bit that you spoke about. We all have a place of goodness and wellness inside. It's given to us by God. It's untouchable. We're all created in the image of God. So deep inside of any one of us, including the worst people, you want to say the worst people in the world, everybody is created in the image of God. People don't always act that way, but it doesn't mean that's not true. So if we're able to tap into that place of goodness that we have within ourselves, and we don't even have to always tap into it. The more we can tap into it, the better we are. But if we're able to always know that that's there, and that we know that there's always that place of well-being, of health, of natural resilience that we have within us, no matter what it is that we're thinking, if our personal thinking is taking us for a ride, we can still see the light at the end of the tunnel. We know we're going to come out of it. We always do. We have to. And it will happen. We just may have to hang on for a little bit. So if I'm not feeling good, or I'm feeling down or upset about something, I can start analyzing all of it. But again, if my analysis is related to the external things, I'm missing the point because it's not the external thing. So, okay, I get upset about what happens with my kids. Oh, so I say, oh, I should have dealt with my kid differently. I should have done this. I should have done that. My kid this, or I get upset at work. Oh, I want to change this process. Or I want to change. Okay, fine. That may be beneficial to some degree. But if I'm saying that that is the cause of why I'm feeling this way, well, that's only my personal thinking telling me that that's the cause of what's me feeling this way. And it's missing the actual, there's still something in between that thing and my feeling, and that's my thinking. So if I don't have to change the thinking necessarily, I just have to recognize that it is my thinking. And it's like an autocorrect almost. It's a self-correcting mechanism, because if I know that it is my thinking, and I truly know that it is my thinking, I'm not saying know this intellectually. This is something that we have to know on a deeper level within ourselves, and we have to see it and believe it. And at first when I started looking into this sort of stuff, I'm a physician by training, so I want to see randomized double-blind control experiments and the research and this and that. Okay, it's all nice, and there's some stuff. There's a bunch of research related to this stuff out there, but once you see it happen in your own life, you don't need any research anymore because at the end of the day, we all want to feel good. So then the more I started feeling good, the more I started recognizing this. It's a self-reinforcing mechanism, basically. So once I see that it actually is my thinking and that I'm the thinker of these thoughts, then I don't have to take my thinking so seriously. And I know that my thinking is going to change. It always does if I let it. If I hold on to the thoughts that I'm holding on to, then I'm digging myself deeper, for good or for bad. But if I'm able to let go and I let it, and new thoughts always do pop in, we just don't always pay attention to them. So if the new thought pops in, then that could be a better thought. And with one thought, everything can change. And we see this happen in our life too. And we see this happen in the lives of our patients. All of a sudden, you're walking down the street. Imagine you get a phone call. Someone passes away. With one thought, everything changes. Now, we don't know if it's true or not true. Let's say you get a call 5 minutes later, say, oops, I made a mistake. I called the wrong person. All of a sudden, everything changes again. So this is all thinking. It's not related to necessarily what is actually happening in the world. And this happens all the time. You hear a story about something, or you see something, or oh, it was a mistake. I didn't mean to call you, or I didn't mean to say that, or whatever. And all of a sudden, everything changes. I was I remember it was back at COVID. I was supposed to go visit my wife's family, and we had to apply for for visas and special entry and whatever. And so we did it at 9 o'clock. We already it was I think we were flying on a Wednesday. We were supposed to fly. Wednesday came and Wednesday went. We didn't get the approvals that we needed. Then Friday morning, it's like we get an email from the embassy saying your application was denied. You're not going. So now we're starting to get all upset. 1 o'clock in the afternoon, I get another email saying, "Oh, your application." We submitted like 5 applications because they weren't getting back to us, whatever. So 1 o'clock in the afternoon, we get another email saying your application is approved. So it's like, what is real? What's actually happening? And then when we also, so then all of a sudden it's just these ideas and these thoughts that are, sure, something did change externally, but we see, and then we have the ability to interpret any situation in a lot of different ways. And I spoke about that, before when I was how we go in to look at patients. You're waiting online in the supermarket and somebody cuts you in line. You get upset at the person? You might. Well, why are you getting upset? Because you're thinking that they're taking advantage of you. But what happens if the person says to you, or what happens if you think that the person is in a rush because their wife is sick at home, their kid is sick at home, they have an emergency or something? Are you going to get upset at them for cutting the line? Maybe not as much. So now all of a sudden you have the same exact external situation, but the way in which we think about it is different. So I'm just trying to use these kind of stories or these like anecdotes to just show that and the more any of us are really able to understand this, the better off, at least I found myself to be. And then the people that I work with, they tend to agree with this sort of stuff eventually, when we see it. But it's a little bit different. It's a little bit a different way of seeing things and seeing the world, because it really disconnects what's happening externally from what's happening internally. And there is that bridge in the middle, which is thought, basically. So the more we're able to see that, and the more I've seen that in my life, then the more I've truly been able to see that space that's there, that potential space that's there. And then that space is filled with my interpretation, my thinking, and then how it is that I use my thinking, that's up to me. And that's a tremendous power that we have, especially in medicine and especially in the emergency room where people are coming in so upset. But now it's like I can laugh and I can smile and, maybe not in their face, but at least in my head, and just see. And this is what we're all doing. We're all operating using our best thinking all the time. And when we say to ourselves, we always say, oh, I wish I did it differently. I couldn't. If I could have done it differently at the time, I would have done it differently then. But I couldn't have done it differently because I didn't. Because my thinking at that time told me that that's how I had to do it. And we could take this to an extreme too. I was talking to one of my patients in the addiction center. He had murdered somebody who had raped his sister. And he was in jail for 25 years. He was dealing with heroin addiction, other sort of stuff. Eventually came into the clinic where I was working, and we got into some conversations about this. And he said, I regretted it. Like now I regret it. But at the time, I couldn't have done anything differently. I had to do that because someone raped my sister. I got so upset about it. It led down this pathway. And then, I could see how this could happen. You could do something terrible. But how is it that a human being who has a piece of God inside them can do something terrible? Because their thinking allows them to do it. Their thinking tells them that it's okay for whatever reason. Doesn't make the action okay. But now at least I was able to see some sort of an understanding of this pathway of how something could have happened. And then I say to myself, if I was in his shoes, if I was brought up in this way, if I was exposed to all this stuff, could my thinking have caused me to do the same thing?
Absolutely.
Right. So we start to see that there is this thing at play. And then when we see that there's this thing at play, it everything, all this stuff that we're doing at the end of the day, all these extra things, the journaling, this, it's changing, is refocusing our thinking. So we can do all those things, and I think they're good if it's helpful. But if we find ourselves, like you said, getting stressed out about having to do all this stuff, then to me, this is a lot simpler, a lot cleaner. It's a foundation of everything, basically. So if we understand the foundation, then we can build upon that. And by building upon that is really what I found that, and it's really first really getting a solid foundation in this and really having this understanding has transformed the way in which I see really all of life in general. And it's made it so much better, so much more enjoyable. And I think it's something that really is key to a good, successful, happy, not only career, but life and relationships and just understanding of people in general.
Wow. My mind is so blown. Dr. Schwarzbaum, wow. Okay. So what I'm thinking is what I'm thinking. I'm being mindful of what I'm thinking. So many thoughts, but academic medicine and medicine is crazy busy. In my 30-some years being in this space, I've never seen it, from my perspective, I've never seen people more brittle, more stressed than they are now. And I don't foresee anything really changing. I don't foresee these mega monolithic kind of buildings and organizations and healthcare centers and hospitals. I don't see them changing rapidly, certainly. So if one assumption is that the pace of work, the stressors, the pressure to generate revenue, to generate scholarship, to get grants, to teach learners, to run projects, to build programs, to build relationships, all those things, none of that is going to stop or change. So what can change? And that's back to what you said, Josh. There's only one thing that we can control, and that's us. And so that is both the maddening and yet something, I guess, rewarding or kind of, I don't know what the word is, like circumspect. I kind of feel like, well, okay, it's a peaceful, almost like a Buddhist or the be still, Psalm 46, be still and know that I'm God. It's this not want to say resignation, but there's something beautiful in recognizing that simplicity, pulling things back, doing less, stripping away all the noise. And I'm thinking of so much noise, almost like our brains are commercials with just ticker tapes and things running all the time, and getting to the place where we can click an X out of those ads that are constantly running in our headspace and coming to the center of just be, and getting to your listening and be, that we don't have to do as much as we think we need to do. Is that kind of sort of getting to it?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, you said it. You said it yourself. Yeah.
I said it myself. Yeah. See how I kind of thought my way through that. But I'm really fascinated by this idea of the awareness of the thinking. I am the thinker. Could you, for someone listening to this who is about to walk into a patient room and to meet with a patient, you've had a relationship for a while. So what could they do? Like, what's it? Again, something else to do, a checklist of things to do to refocus or recenter and catch themselves when they're starting to spin out. What are a couple pointers that we can start practicing this awareness that you have?
I think it's when you spoke about feelings before, the feelings, if we have an understanding that the feeling is a marker of our thinking, and that's all it is, that already changes a lot. So if I'm about to walk in the room and I'm feeling antsy or agitated or whatever, if I'm attributing it to something that's going on outside of me, it's going to be very difficult to change. If I'm saying I'm having a terrible day, I got patients yelling at me, I got nurses bothering me, I got my administrator this, I got my something going on at home, all of a sudden I'm just taking myself and just making everything worse. If I recognize that there's whatever is going on outside of me, and then there's my thinking, and then there's my feeling. So if I see my feeling is not good, I don't I don't look to the outside. I just know that somewhere in the back of my mind that it's my thinking. That already is a big reset in and of itself. Because then somewhere I could say to myself, or somewhere I do say to myself, or I don't even need to say it, it's just somewhere I know that it's my thinking. So if my thinking is going to go, if I can let that thinking go, or if I can look for something else, now all of a sudden I may be able to settle down a little bit. Sometimes it's hard to do. Sometimes we can't do it. We're just in something. And that's okay too. And it's at those times, I don't get upset that I'm feeling that way because that's just going to exacerbate it also. I know somewhere that it's my thinking. I know that it's going to pass and it's going to get better. Sometimes we can't get out of it right when we need to, and that's okay. But what I try to do is just find my good feeling as much as possible. And the more that I'm able to do this in every area of my life, just the more I'm in it all the time. So the feeling is the barometer of my thinking. So if I'm able to be in a place where I am thinking well more and more of the time, now I'm using my feelings as an alarm system to tell me I'm out of my good place, out of my good thinking. So this isn't like an instant on, instant off. The idea is to get to more of a baseline of always feeling good, of always being in this place, or always, but as much as possible, really, because we're all going to get taken for a ride. That's human nature. There's nothing we can do about it. But the more that I'm able to be in that place more of the time, then the more I recognize when I'm out of that place. And when I recognize that I'm out of that place, now I say it's my thinking, and then I get back to that place. So where's my baseline? So in the acute setting of when I'm going into a patient or something, if I have this understanding ahead of time and I could feel better more of the time, well, now I could say either, I could say, all right, I understand I'm not feeling so good, but I'm going to go in and set whatever it is aside and, find that good place within me, or I could not. But if I'm able to do that, then I can at least set it aside. Or if I can look for my good feeling more, I know how to find that more reliably, then I can go in and have this better interaction overall. And that's what I found has been beneficial too, just by having this understanding, because then more of the time I do feel better. And it's not only that. And then when I don't feel good, it just doesn't last as long. Whereas I used to get upset about something, maybe it will last for a day or I don't know, 2 days, a week, however long it is. I mean, we look around, you look at people's moods. How long does it take someone to get back into a good mood? So where it used to last a day, now maybe it lasts half a day. Or maybe where it lasted half a day, now it lasts an hour. Where it used to last an hour, now it lasts 5 minutes. So I learned to not take myself so seriously, to not take my thinking so seriously, to not take my feelings so seriously. The ones that I take seriously are the ones that I want to feel, the ones that make me feel good. The more that I'm connected to that place inside of me, the place of God within us, the place of the universal power, the spiritual intelligence, the place of higher design, whatever you may want to call it, then I'm sitting in a good feeling because that's what that is. That's the place of connection. That's the place of universal wellness, of universal well-being. So the more I'm able to sit in that place, then the more good I feel. And then the more I'm sitting in that place, the more I recognize almost instantaneously when I'm out of that place. And when I work with people, it's funny because it's like, they come to this realization and it's like, I've heard it a bunch of times, which is funny because they think that they're abnormal for feeling good because for so long they've been feeling not good. So they think that's what the baseline is. Then all of a sudden they hear about this place of good feeling and you could feel good 90% of the time, 95%, whatever percent, but they think it's crazy because all of a sudden, aren't we? And this is the problem, I think, in life and in medicine. And I mean, look at all the advertisements that we see. And you were talking about all these advertisements and, look at everything. Oh, you got to do this to feel good. You got to do that to feel good. Everybody feel bad. Everybody goes into medicine. You know how many people, and how many medical students are calling me up now that are considering going into emergency medicine and saying, I heard I'm going to be burned out. Should I really go into emergency medicine?
Mm.
It's a shame.
Mm-hmm.
You may be burned out, you may not, but it's how you look at emergency medicine that's going to determine if you're burned out. Because there are people that are burned out, there are people that are not burned out. It's not necessarily an easy place to work, but it doesn't mean you're going to necessarily be burned out. You could be. So we get these ideas in our head about how things are going to be or how they're going to turn out. And then sure enough, they come to fruition.
Self-fulfilling prophecy.
Exactly. So the more that we're able to see and the more that we're able to find this place within ourselves, then we bring ourselves in the best way possible. And we can't give what we don't have. So how am I going to help somebody? How am I going to help somebody feel good if I don't feel good?
Mm-hmm.
I could try to, but it's not going to be as effective. If I feel good, I can much more effectively help somebody else feel good. So if I want to be able to do that, then find it for myself. And there's another problem in our society and life. We're taught not to be selfish. In this realm, be selfish. Help yourself first. Do what you got to do for yourself. Because the more you're able to do this for yourself, the more you're able to get yourself in a good place and in a good feeling, the more impact you're going to have, the more impactful your impact is going to be, the more you're going to be able to help others, the more you're going to help other people heal, because you're going to be coming from a place of natural healing, a place within yourself that feels good. And when you give from that place, it's endless, because that's a place of the higher power. It's a place of God. God, look around. Everything is God. Everything. So you look around, you see everything is God. God is giving all the time, creating everything new in every moment, and there's no end. So we get worried. Oh, if I give too much, if I'm going to deplete myself. No. If we do it from the proper place, we know when to give. We have to know when to give. We have to know when to restrain ourselves. But this all comes with sort of practicing this sort of stuff. And then when we're able to give from that place, it's endless. We could keep on doing it. And not only is it endless, it also reinvigorates us as well. So when we find that place within ourselves, and we all have it, no matter where you are, no matter what disease they told you you have, no matter where you're from, what you were born into, what you got going on, whatever it is, we all have that place within ourselves. And the more we're able to tap into it, the more we're able to find it, the better off we feel. And the better we feel, the more we could spread that feeling to other people.
Wow. Boom. Ah, I feel like I've just been to church. Preach, preach, Dr. Schwarzbaum. This is such good news. And it's such a shame when we look around and feel like some cultures have an expectation of this, the hustle and grind, conflict habituation, that if you're happy or you're smiling, you must not be working hard enough. And the culture of busyness and the cult of busyness that is so pervasive, where we almost train ourselves and train the next generation of you're sweating blood. And if you're not working hard enough. You're not writing enough papers. You're not seeing enough patients. You're not getting things done fast enough. And where does that lead us? It leads us to this current state of affairs where everyone's running around like we're on fire, burned out, very fragile and brittle things break. They don't bend. And I think I'm really loving that be selfish and do less. It's so contrary to everything we're trained. And yet that's what's going to save us, right? That's what's going to save, I think, medicine and gosh, the culture. Slowing down, be still, doing less, recognizing that we are the thinker. And I really appreciate that our feelings are the barometer. That's the signals that we need to pay attention to, and then not necessarily worry about doing anything about it, but just recognizing them, that awareness of what's happening and why am I doing this? Well, this website, I love it, healthyinside.net. It's one word, healthyinside.net. And you can see Dr. Josh Schwarzbaum's website here, where he helps people understand the principles behind finding their peace of mind, well-being, and good feelings. He has a free ebook there. I heard a couple another ones coming out, but this is the Mastermind, 3 principles to finding lasting inner peace and good feelings. I hope you come back, Josh. This is such a great conversation. I could listen to you all day long. Your patients, your family members, your friends, your colleagues are blessed to have you in their lives. Thank you so much for opening my eyes and our eyes to this wonderful principle. I think it's you're going to change the world. Let's get the message out. Let's get you back on here. Everybody go see Dr. Joshua Schwarzbaum's website, healthyinside.net. And I'm going to leave some final thoughts to you, and I'm going to shut my face and listen to you, Josh.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you again for having me. It's nice being here. I like talking about this stuff. Yeah, I think one other thing that came up, when you were saying the last thing, another thing that I hear a bunch is like, oh, so it's my fault I'm feeling this way, or, which makes sense, right? And it's something I commonly get, especially when I work with people. They're like, oh, so there's something wrong with me or what? No, that's not actually the case. On the surface, it may seem that way, but that's not actually the case because it's our thinking that's doing whatever it is. It doesn't take away from who we are. It doesn't mean that we could be doing anything differently. Like we said before, we're all doing the best we can. So we don't have to change ourselves. We don't have to do it. If you don't want to, you don't have to. Like, you know, it just depends on how we're looking. And it doesn't put and one of the things I think when, as we see it a lot in the literature, the burnout literature and all this sort of stuff is like, we want the system to take responsibility for what's going on. We don't put the blame on the clinicians. Don't put the blame on the doctors. Don't put the blame on the nurses. It's not putting blame. This isn't assigning blame. And it's very important to understand that. It's not saying that there's something wrong with you. It's not saying that you have to do anything. All I'm trying to convey is that there's a system at play. The more I found that I'm able to understand the system, the better I feel. Whether or not I want to use the system to my advantage is up to me. The system is still at play regardless. Electricity is working. If I stick my finger in the outlet, it doesn't care. It's going to shock me. It doesn't mean that there's something wrong with me. It will shock me. And if I don't know about electricity, I may think that I need to stick my finger in further to stop getting shocked. But that's not what's going to happen. I'm just going to get shocked more. So when I'm able to take my finger out, when I know that the system is at play, and the more I'm able to understand electricity, the more I can use it for my benefit. And the same thing is true here. The more I'm able to understand these principles, no matter what I've been through, no matter what I've gone through, no matter how I felt in the past, no matter what sort of therapy I've been to, no matter what I've been dealing with, it's a reset. It allows me to look at things, to settle down, to look at things in a new way, to feel better. And it's just about that. And it doesn't mean that the system doesn't need to change. Because if there are problems in the system, absolutely we should change the system. If it doesn't make sense for workflows, it doesn't make sense for well-being, absolutely we need to change it. But at the end of the day, I want to leave work feeling good. Do I want to wait for the whole system to change until that happens? No. I personally don't. I'd rather leave work feeling good despite it. And if I really, really think that I can't feel good, then I have another option. Now, there's always different options out there. Do I want to go find another job? Do I want to go look at something else? Like there are all these different things that I could do. So I said to myself a long time ago, why be miserable, Why do it? And sometimes, like you said, our society tells us it's built into the culture of this is how it's going to be. This is how it has to be. This is what everybody goes through. It's a rite of passage and whatever. All right, we can live that way. And that is one way to live. We may still be productive. We may use stress as a motivator. We may use all these things to help us propel us forward to the competitive nature of things and whatever. And it may work to some degree. But at the end of the day, I want to feel good. I want to enjoy my life. And the more I'm able to see that these are the principles that are at play, this is how things are working, that I have a lot of control. It actually tells me I'm not the victim. I'm the one who's in power here. So it changes that whole paradigm to, it's not just what's happening to me. I'm what's happening to myself. I'm at the center of creating my own reality. So I can create my reality however I want to create it. And if I have that ability, and just like we said, how God is creating everything anew every second, I have the ability to create everything new in the way I think about it. Every new thought is a new creation. Every new thought. So I can have a new thought about whatever happened to me previously, and all of a sudden the whole paradigm of what happened has now changed. I may have still gone through something that wasn't pleasant, but the way in which I think about it now, it may change the way in which I see it. It may change the way I relate to it. It may take me from having been a victim of whatever it was that I've experienced in the past to now getting power from it and helping me grow and helping me help other people. And I've done this in various aspects of my life. And the people I've worked with have done this in their lives too. And then you see and you hear stories about people that have taken very, bad traumatic events and have turned them into catapults for growth. And they've done it. And we all have the ability to do that. And this, to me, understanding these principles has just been revolutionary in the way that it gives an equal playing field to everybody, every person on earth, regardless of their religion, regardless of where they come from, regardless of, their country of origin, regardless of any of these external things that, we assign so much importance to, because it really levels the playing field between all people. We all have a piece of God within ourselves. We all think, we all pick up on our thinking to create our feelings. And it seems too simple, almost to be true. But those are the three principles, basically. And that's it. It's very, very simple. But the more we're able to settle down into those and see them, then healing, true healing, I found takes place. And I think that it's something that we all have the ability to do if we're willing to let some of our preconceived notions go, if we're willing to allow ourselves to settle into something a little bit deeper, to listen a little bit more, and to a willingness to explore some of these areas in ways that maybe we haven't seen before. And it takes a lot to do. It took a lot for me to do because of my training. Like I said, you want to see evidence, you want to see this. But once I started really seeing it, then it's just like, wow, it's a lot simpler than I thought. And if we look at anything, the truth is everything is built on something very, very simple. Things just become a lot more complex. If you boil everything down, we're boiling down things to their atomic levels, or, it's all these simple electrons, protons, neutrons, but then they create all these. So how different is everything really? It's in the makeup of these things that really makes everything different. But when we go back and back and back and back, everything is really just built from the spiritual nature of things, the spiritual energy that creates everything. So we all come from that place. We all go from that place. And that's another thing in medicine that we have the ability to see. If you've gone to medical school, you've seen people, or even if you have, depending on where you work in medicine, you may have had the ability to see a baby born, or see, embryology and all that whole process taking place. You've had the ability to see somebody die. So this is life, the bookends of what's going on, of what we're able to see and what we're able to interact with. Where are we coming from? Where are we going to? We're all coming from the same place. We're all going to the same place. So we have this thing called life that's smack in the middle of those two things that we're making into something. So we're all a lot more similar than we think. It's just this little piece of, of eternity, this part in eternity that we're here, that all of a sudden everything seems so different. Everything seems so divisive. Everything seems so disconnected. But if we're able to unify, God is unity. God is one. If we're able to unify everything back together, see the commonalities between people, we've solved a lot of the world problems. Solved a lot of our own problems, a lot of our community problems, a lot of our family problems. So the more I've been able to do that, the more I've been able to help others do that, just changes everything.
Thank you, Josh.
Hello, everyone. It's your podcast producer, Casey Calnan. Please make sure to download for free our newest Faculty Factory book, The Academic Medicine Starter Kit, Timeless Tips and Guidance for Early Career Faculty Members. More information on that is available on the facultyfactory.org homepage. In addition to that, I wanted to let you know that as of June 2024, this podcast has had more than 85,000 total downloads and roughly 11,000 total YouTube views. And in addition to that, the Faculty Factory website has drawn 46,000 web visits from users in 122 countries. And we're inviting you to be a guest on our show. Please reach out if you'd like to be a guest or to nominate someone in our academic medicine community that you think we need to hear from. Visit us on facultyfactory.org and drop us a message there.
Thanks for tuning in to Faculty Factory Podcast. The mission of the Faculty Factory is to build and support a community of leaders in faculty development who share tools, resources, wisdom, and encouragement in service to our faculty members, schools, and institutions. We encourage you to go to facultyfactory.org to find out more. Get in touch with me, ask me any questions. Maybe you want to be interviewed on the podcast. Thanks for tuning in to Faculty Factory Podcast. We'll see you next time. The Faculty Factory podcast and website is sponsored by the Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine Office of Faculty. For more information, visit facultyfactory.org.